Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest in sports news, fantasy analysis, and opinions. Don't forget the hot takes. Can't have a sports show without hot takes these days. What about hot cakes, though? I want some hot cakes. Now, here's your host, ready to jump into the thick of things, Dwayne Callender.
Hello, and welcome to the show. I gotta be honest, folks. I had a whole show planned out with going into detail about the football games today, talk some NBA, talk some other NFL news with hiring, and maybe get into a little hockey as well with the Premier League to boot. But honestly, I was so utterly disgusted, and I mean just fed up with watching the early game today with the San Diego. And I'm not even going to call them the LA Chargers because, like, it's a joke. They are the same old San Diego Chargers, just utterly pissing the bed against the Patriots. Like, to be perfectly blunt, the Chargers could not have executed a worse game plan to pull off a playoff victory in Foxborough. That was the single worst game plan I have seen against the Patriots in at least 5 years in terms of teams just getting their asses handed to them. I couldn't believe for the life of me that with an entire week to prepare, yes, I know you played on Sunday, but you had a full week to prepare, that the Chargers would roll out the same lazy defense with 7 DBs that they used against Baltimore last week. Yes, playing zone against Tom Brady. It's one thing when you're playing zone against a rookie QB making his first career playoff start that's not used to playing in the pocket like Lamar Jackson, that's running what essentially amounts to a college offense with a triple option. That's one thing where you roll out 7 DBs and you're just trying to fly to the ball. It's an entirely different matter when you're playing against the New England Patriots with Tom Brady, who reads zone defenses like the back of his head. It's a zone defense is going to do absolutely nothing against Tom Brady. The Patriots basically saw what the Chargers did last week, prepared for it. They prepared for the Chargers to make other adjustments, and, you know, for the lack of a better term, they didn't even need to. The Chargers never made any adjustments. They stayed in the exact same base personnel and accepted getting their asses kicked. The only thing the Chargers could have done any better was to bend over, stick a Post-it note on their ass, and say, "Kick me." To be perfectly honest, this game was over by the middle of the first quarter. I put down live betting money on the Pats to clean house and in large quantities because of the fact that the Chargers literally showed nothing on defense that remotely resembles how you approach the New England offense. There was no actual jamming of receivers. Everyone had a free release. There was no spying of James White. Sony Michel could run all day because the Patriots went with 21 personnel, which means 2 wide receivers, a tight end in Gronk, and a fullback in Devlin in the backfield to block for Michel, and just ran it down the Chargers' throats. There was absolutely no adjustment by the Chargers. They knew exactly what to do. Against 7 DBs, you run the football and you keep running it. The reason why it worked against Baltimore was the fact that Baltimore, basically running an option offense, is just trying to get to the outside. If you're running power run and you're using a fullback, yeah, you're going to get upfield because all those DBs are going to get blocked up. Like, people forget this about Gronk. Gronk is one of the best blocking tight ends in NFL history. I know he looks like an idiot, but the man is an absolute monster run blocker. And again, it was on display today. He was blowing guys up left and right. Yes, he has trouble moving down the field like he used to. The injuries have caught up to him, but in terms of blocking, he is still an elite blocker. The Chargers, for lack of a better term, just completely misread the situation. I couldn't believe that the Chargers actually rolled out 7 DBs against the Patriots as if they didn't do that the week before. It was incomprehensible. The fact of the matter is that even if they hadn't done it last week, it was still a terrible game plan because, again, as I said, zone defenses are absolutely nothing for Tom Brady. You're never going to confuse the guy. He's been in the league way too long. He knows where the hot read's going to be and the soft part of the zone. Tony Romo was, and I'll give Romo credit here. He was being incredibly kind to the Chargers by saying and pointing out the obvious that they have to change up the defense because zone is never going to work against Tom Brady. He was being kind. The fact of the matter is that, and I'm watching post-game press conferences with the Saints dressed up in ski masks mocking the Eagles. Oh boy. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that Tony Romo was pointing it out on the broadcast multiple times. It was clear as day that the Chargers had the terrible game plan set up, and for the life of me, I couldn't understand how not a single coach on that staff could have pointed out the fact that no team in the 15 plus years we've been watching New England just dominate the NFL, that you can't run zone defense against Tom Brady. That hasn't worked in over a decade. Like, did you not do any homework? It's unbelievable. It's honestly as though the Chargers thought that that if they rolled out the exact same defensive personnel, it would trick the Patriots because the Patriots would be practicing for the Chargers to do something entirely different, and that by rolling out the same defense like an idiot, that they would somehow Jedi mind trick the Patriots that it's this incredibly complex defense that they have to figure out. I mean, I literally said this like going into the game. I thought it was going to be a difficult game because I thought the Chargers were actually going to do something different and use their athleticism and play big because they have big guys that can actually match up well against the New England front. They didn't play any of them. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. The Chargers actually had the personnel to match up in this game and decided to play DBs. I'm flabbergasted. I am absolutely flabbergasted that the San Diego, and I say San Diego because I've given up with the whole LA Chargers thing. You know what? I'm just calling them the Chargers because it's utterly embarrassing. I mean, and the less said about the Chargers offense, the better, because I said this before. I didn't trust Phillip Rivers to be able to manage this game and control his emotions to be able to get it through. I thought they had the focus on the run game to get it going, but they were so far behind early because they couldn't stop a cold with the Patriots' rushing attack, and the fact that they had the wrong personnel to even engage the Patriots to begin with. This game was a non-starter from the get-go, so there was no chance the Chargers were going to be able to get the run game going with Melvin Gordon because they were behind too early. It was over and done with. But in order to actually have a chance, you actually have to prep and do a decent prep job. Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator for the Jags, should be ashamed of himself. I mean, he was staring off into space during the game because he really didn't have any answers. But I can't understand how you don't have any answers when literally the entire game plan would just be looking at any zone blitz schemes that you've seen in the past from the likes of a Rex Ryan as much of a goofball as he is, the man knows defense. You can look at any defensive game plan implemented by the Baltimore Ravens against the Patriots. You can always look at the Giants in terms of actual four-man rush. Like, the Chargers run a 3-4 defense, but at the same time, you have to know the only way you're actually going to be able to do anything against the Patriots is the simple fact of the matter is pressure up the middle, jam the receivers at the line of scrimmage. It really comes down to that. Can you jam them, and can you get home to Brady so he can't drop off the ball? You try to limit the blitz as much as possible because he's going to hit the hot read pretty much 8 out of 10 times when you blitz him. Yes, at times, if you're really far behind like the Chargers were, blitzing is your only option because you have to speed up the game. And yes, you leave yourself vulnerable to get blown out, but it's the only way to force the turnover. That's what the Chargers should have done when they were that far behind. But to start the game, the fact that they went with 7 DBs, I couldn't believe it. I'm watching the game, and I already know the game's over. It is the most depressing thing watching a football game with 5 minutes in, and you know the other team has so poorly prepared for the game that it's over. It is completely over with the game plan that they're trying to execute. I couldn't believe watching that with the Chargers. It was so disappointing watching that game today because it should have been a good game, and it wasn't because the Chargers came in with the absolute worst game plan that they could have even drawn up themselves to play the Patriots. I really, someone's going to have to explain that to me, how they honestly thought that zone defense against Tom Brady at this stage of his career was somehow going to confuse him and slow him down. And why they actually thought that the run game wouldn't be able to dominate at the line of scrimmage when the Patriots have done that time after time with lining up a fullback to put a hat on the head and make sure you can't get up, can't penetrate the line of scrimmage. It's just one of those where I just shake my head. I have to shake my head. So I'm going to bring my dad on. We're going to talk about the Saints game and the Pats game. And God help me, but like this entire day of football was ruined right off the bat with how poorly the Chargers came out to start that game and just never recovered because it was a terrible game plan from the start. I can't believe the Chargers actually thought that was going to be a viable strategy against the Patriots. It's unbelievable in my opinion, and about the height of negligence as an NFL team coming into a playoff game. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm going to bring my dad on the line here, and we're going to talk about the rest of the games. But just absolutely frustrated watching that game today. Just embarrassing. That's the only word I can describe it as. Simply embarrassing to watch. All right, Callie. So yeah, let's run it back, Callie. Let's run it back to how that game opened up, because the opening drive of that game, the Patriots had the ball for over 6 minutes and literally ran it right down the Chargers' throat. They went big jumbo package. They ran it right in between the tackles with Sonny Michel, and every pass on the outside was going to James White because the Chargers kept playing zone. Like it was ridiculous. They left the middle of the field open with Tom Brady, thinking that the pass rush was going to get there. Tom Brady can deliver the ball in under 3 seconds every single time. The pass rush will never get there because Tom Brady will release the ball at just over 2 seconds, because that's how long it takes for James White to run a route and get open in the flat. It was easy as can be. I literally called this game plan, but it was so easily executed because there was no, like, everything you could have done wrong from a defensive standpoint, the Chargers ran the wrong defense against what the Patriots were going to do today. It was I can't believe, it was honestly as though the Chargers never watched a goddamn tape of the New England Patriots.
Well, the problem I had wasn't even the first drive, because I always say that, well, maybe they surprise you in the first drive, so you make adjustments for the rest of the game. The problem I had was all the other drives. It was the same. They played the same defense. It's not like the first drive that killed me, because they gotta figure this out. You know, when the Patriots went on the second drive, it was even easier.
Well,
it's like look. Let me tell you something. They went in at halftime and came back up with the same exact defense.
That's
they
what.
played the same defense.
That is literally That's what pissed me off the most about watching this game, is the fact that Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator for the Chargers, stuck with the exact same game plan. Romo said it multiple times. He's like, you can't go zone against the Patriots. That's like, you may want to play zone because that's what you normally do, but the Patriots are going to force you to do stuff that you don't like to do. And the Chargers, instead of actually trying to play man-to-man, just stuck playing in zone and just were content letting the clock run out. I couldn't believe it. There was no attempt whatsoever to get back in that game. Because even if you were going to play zone,
it's the most
wait, you were breaking up there, Callie. But what I was saying is, like, the issue with this game was the fact that, the issue I was saying with this game though was the fact that you were breaking up as well. But like, the issue that I said was happening with this game was the fact that for the vast majority of it, the Chargers were completely out of the game, and they did nothing in the second half to speed the game up, to at least give themselves a chance. Like, at least, like, you can play man-to-man and blitz, like quarter blitz, anything to at least speed up the game so it makes it a little bit faster for New England. The Chargers played that game in cruise control the entire time, and New England was like, yeah, we're just going to let this ride in neutral.
Yeah, look, let me tell you something. It's the most inept game planning I've ever seen. You know, the thing that pissed me off is that I can understand if you're playing against Patrick Mahomes. He's only been in the league basically for 1 year. So if he surprises you, okay. But for you to tell me that Tom Brady, with all these years, that you don't know what Tom Brady likes or what the Patriots is going to play, I mean, something's wrong there. Something's actually wrong, because this is not a new thing. You cannot play. Look, there's two things I know about Brady. Zone against him and do not blitz him, because when he blitz, he loves it.
Oh yeah, well,
he does. He throws right in the space that you picked it.
Yeah, no. But the reason why I was saying you're gonna. But the one reason why I was saying the only thing the Chargers can do at that point, being so far down, is to blitz, is because it's gonna force him to speed the game up. So at least if you're blitzing, you have guys dropping back. At least you can play that zone blitz that the Steelers like to do, and you hope you force a turnover. But that's the only thing you can do. Either you get burned completely, or you force the turnover. You don't just sit there and let them dictate the entire rest of the game to you, like the Chargers did. Literally, the Chargers just were like, "Oh, you're digging a grave for me? Okay, I'll just go roll in it."
Well, I don't understand how they came so ill-prepared. You know,
and I don't want to hear about the West Coast thing. Because like they were gonna get their asses kicked whether it was a 4:00 game or a 1:00 game. That game plan needed to be chucked immediately because they rolled up with the exact same defensive formation that they used against Baltimore, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that they actually thought that they could reuse the exact same game plan they used the week before when they just gave the game tape to New England and didn't think that they were going to figure out a way of just short-circuiting it completely. I couldn't believe it. Like, zone defenses work against rookie QBs. It's not going to work against 18-year veterans. Like, that. Are you kidding me?
It's amazing. You know, I don't know. I couldn't believe that they were so dumb. I couldn't believe they made it so easy for New England. You know, I really couldn't believe they made it so easy for New England. Yeah. It's the dumbest thing that I've ever seen. You know, I'm sitting there and I'm like, because a friend was coming to pick me up, so I'm sitting here watching the game, and I'm like, because I tuned into the game a little too early because I couldn't find it, and I look and it's 7-0. So I'm like, oh my God, yeah, you know. So I saw when the Chargers scored touchdown to make it 7-7, and I'm watching the second New England drive, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're gonna play this zone defense against Brady? You know, I'm watching them. Boom, they go down, they score, they make it 14-7, and they kick it off, and I think they went 3 and out, and they gave the ball back to New England. I'm like, you're gonna change up that defense, right? And it's like, I said, wait a minute, you playing the same defense? Boom, 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 boom. 21. They come back again. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That game was over at the end of the first half. You understand? That game was done. It was done. Because they kept playing that same zone defense, and the problem is the commentator was saying that, you know, Romo said that you can't play that defense all the time.
It made no sense
for that zone defense
because the zone defense is going to give up chunks of yardage, and at that point, because the Chargers have been stopped multiple times, New England just kept gashing them. I mean, once it's 21-7, you have to change it up. You have to change up the defense. They wouldn't change it. I couldn't believe it because, honestly, when you came out for the second half and it's 35-7, you know you have to change something. Anything. And that's what was so frustrating watching that game. The Chargers were resigned to losing the goddamn game. They gave up at halftime because, honestly, I would rather get beat like 56 something, like just completely pounded, than have New England just keep running the same offense and just grinding out the clock the way it did in the second half. That's the frustrating thing.
You know what the worst thing about that game was? That is probably the easiest game New England played all year.
Oh, easily. Because the game reminded me. You know what that game reminded me of? Because it was the exact same game plan they used. You know what game it reminded me of? It reminded me of, and this game goes back like 6 years now. It's like it's either 5 or 6 years now. I think it's actually probably closer to 6 years now. But it reminded me of when Andrew Luck and the Colts, when Luck was either a rookie or a second year in the league. They won their first game, had to travel to New England on a Saturday night, and the Patriots literally lined up the tackles and just ran the ball down their throat the entire game, and Chuck Pagano just let it happen. Like, it was the exact same game. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, has anyone not paid attention to how New England runs their team? These games, when they know they have a personnel matchup up front that they like and can run the football, they're not going to stop until you change up the defense. If you're just going to keep running out the same personnel and the same formation, all they're going to do is just keep running it down your throat. And when the Chargers basically stuffed the box, they left the outside wide open for James White to catch the ball in the flat because they didn't have anyone spying on him. Literally, this was basic stuff that the New England Patriots do all the time. I don't understand how they couldn't look at a tape of an AFC East team playing the Patriots to understand how you defend the Patriots.
I'm telling you, it's the most ridiculous thing. Look, this game was so easy that, Robert Kraft and his son was sitting there, didn't even bother to put their coats on. They were taking it so easy. It was like a picnic. They came out there and they were, it's like, wait a minute, did the Chargers get paid off? Because I don't understand how they made it so easy. I'm telling you, this is probably the easiest game the Patriots had all year. They just, it's like, it's practice. It's the Blues against the Whites. And you know what, the Whites are going to run, so we're just going to let you see this and they're going to try to stop them. I'm telling you, it's like, it was the easiest thing I ever seen. Oh man, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically after that one came to the debacle in New Orleans. The Saints were so flat to start that game. I was watching that game and I'm just saying to myself, the Saints were it seemed like the Saints were fucking partying before the game even started. But then I read the story.
Yeah.
Did you hear what Sean Payton did?
No.
Before
when I watched the game, I watched it. I went out with a friend in a bar, so I watched the game in a bar. So there's no song.
Yeah. So here's what happened. So here's what happened as part of the before the leading up into the game, like as part of like the pre-game practice. So in order to motivate his team, Sean Payton brought out the Lombardi Trophy and $225,000 inside a trophy case to motivate the team. Like, these guys were so, already looking past the Eagles. Literally, they were already 3 weeks into the future, the way the Saints were playing today, because they were completely unprepared the first quarter. The first quarter, the Eagles did whatever they wanted. They could run the ball. They could throw the ball. The Saints were just a complete mess. And the biggest issue with the Saints today, and they better watch themselves next week, because I think Drew Brees' arm is getting a little tired. Because Drew Brees had a little bit of a dead arm again today, where he can't throw a deep ball over 35 yards. Because there were multiple throws today where the Saints wide receivers were wide open, had a full step and a half on their own defender on the Eagles, and Brees could not throw it to them over the top. He kept underthrowing each throw. That's what led to the first pick, because Ted Ginn was wide open. That was an easy touchdown that Brees just couldn't throw. He couldn't get the ball to him, and it got picked. That's how that first half started. The second play of the game.
I didn't see. I didn't see either of the first two touchdowns, because we were going from one place to the other, and by the time we got there, and I had to get the bartender to find where the game and everything. So I didn't, because
You can't rely on those Trinidad bars to know what the NFL game is on today.
I saw 7-0, so I told the guy, "You got to find this game," and he was looking and he couldn't find it. So I left and I went to another place. When I went there, the good thing about it, the bartender actually knows about American football. So he went looking and he searched. But by that time, it was already 14-0.
I'm telling you, it was some of the easiest drives you'll ever see because I'm watching the Saints defenders, and basically the Eagles can run the football between the tackles. The Saints were completely just out of sorts to start the game, and Nick Foles is just throwing back shoulder the entire time. Again, this was just lack of preparation because if you watch the Eagles, all that offense is Nick Foles throwing the ball back shoulder up top and just letting his receivers box out defenders. Like if you have to challenge the wide receivers.
John Jeffrey.
Yeah, you have to challenge those wide receivers because if you give them space, they're just gonna jump up and catch the ball because if you don't challenge them, that's the easiest thing you can do. Give space to a wide receiver that's gonna get a back shoulder throw.
Yeah.
But basically what you saw after the game, after that first quarter was what the game was. It was a game where the Eagles couldn't move the football because they were getting challenged and Nick Foles couldn't get them the football. Surprise, surprise. And the Saints basically were limited because, again, like I said, they were getting really bad holding penalties. And then when it came down to it, Drew Brees was struggling throwing the deep ball. So they had to rely so much on Michael Thomas on those intermediary routes that Thomas had to carry the offense.
Yeah.
But I will. But the one thing I will say though that was a bit different was I do have to give the Eagles credit. Michael Bennett played his ass off that game. Michael Bennett was run stuffing the hell out of that game because he abused the Saints' offensive line.
Yeah, I felt sorry for him. He played like a monster,
That was easily Michael Bennett's best game since the 2015 season where the Seahawks made it back to the Super Bowl. That was literally the best game I've seen out of him in years. Like, I hadn't seen that Michael Bennett in a couple of years now. Like, that's how good Michael Bennett was today. He was an absolute monster.
He was good. He was a monster today. Yeah.
And the one thing I'll say about that game was, as much as Drew Brees was struggling, the biggest break the Saints got was the fact that Fletcher Cox got hurt. Because if Fletcher Cox doesn't get hurt, I'm not sure if the Saints come back to win that game.
Yeah. I know. They dodged a bullet today. They dodged a bullet. I didn't realize that's what he did, but I couldn't understand why they were so flat.
Absolutely flat. The Saints, and I predicted the Saints to easily smoke the Eagles today because I thought the Saints defense was going to control what the Eagles offense could do. So like that, the rest of the game, how it played out for the Eagles offense was exactly how I thought it was going to play out. I didn't think the Eagles were going to be able to move the ball until garbage time. But the issues that I saw with the Saints were that they were so flat to start the game. It took them forever and a day to get it going. And you just can't do that in the NFL. You can't be that flat, especially in a playoff game. It's like, even against the worst teams in the league, you can't be that flat most of the time without getting yourself into trouble. But in a playoff game, that's inexcusable. Like, to me, like, people are talking up, like, how Sean Payton motivated the Saints, but I just thought it's like the Saints set themselves up for failure because of that whole mentality. They were so flat for that game. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like I can't believe that they were so flat to start this game, and people want to talk about how it was a pep talk. That's the worst pep talk I ever heard of, because considering how flat that came out for the game, I mean, are we serious here?
Hey, they won the game, 20-14, and they had to survive a turnover, to do it. So it's for the Saints being at home. I'm not even sure if they play the Cowboys with the Cowboys running game, if they beat them in that. Because if you score Dallas 14 points with Elliott running, I don't think you can beat them. So they may have dodged the bullet.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. I took out of this was they're fortunate that it wasn't against a team that could run the football like the Cowboys, because again, the 14 points that they spotted were so uncharacteristic of the Saints, and it was just symptomatic of just how disengaged that team was. They were flat. They were getting whipped at both on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football, just not in sync. Drew Brees just started out incredibly slow, and like I said, never really got into it because you could tell that the arm strength was not there today. Like, the best pass of the day actually came from Taysom Hill on a touchdown pass to Alvin Kamara that got called back for a holding penalty that I thought was, I've seen I've seen more get called in terms of a holding penalty. I thought that was a weak one that got called back. But, yeah, I had a lot of issues with the Saints. But once I heard what that pep talk was during the week, now I know why the Saints were so flat. That was I don't know what possessed Sean Payton to kind of go down that path of motivating, but bring out the Lombardi Trophy to pep talk your team before a divisional game. To me, that one backfired. That one should never be heard from again, because they were so flat for this game. There's really no excuse for how flat they were, because as I said, you can only get away with that so much, and the Saints got their bullet today. They dodged their bullet today because
big time.
Because the only thing that I can say about this one was the fact that if that game goes about a tad longer without that, because here's the long and short of it. If Doug Peterson accepts the penalty on that third down play to make it 3rd and 11 instead of making it close enough, because people are going to talk about that fake punt play, and it's true, because even though they're on their own side of the field, my feeling, and Sean Payton knew it too, is that if the Eagles got the ball back with as flat as his team was, they were going to lose that game. That was the long and short of it. He felt the nerves because they were so flat that he had to try something to get them going.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous to sit at home and end up getting caught so flat-footed. Yeah. It's amazing. Anyway.
Yeah, so we'll catch up later on because we got to talk about some of those previews for next week. But you take it easy, Callie.
Okay. All right, son.
All right, have a good one.
All right. Okay.
All right, that's pretty much going to do it for the show tonight. Sometimes I really hate being right, but man, I cannot get over just how utterly inept the Chargers were today. And the fact that the Saints were so flat to start the game, something else had to be going on. And then I realized their own coach brought out the Lombardi Trophy, and they began to look past their own opponent for the week. I can't make this stuff up. No wonder people are just hiring Sean McVay's baristas to be NFL head coaches at this point. Because, half these teams don't even know, logical approaches to playoff games. Again, just utterly mind-blowing just how inept some of these teams have been. But we've got the Final Four, the top 2 seeds of each conference, so hopefully we have some good championship games today, next week, I should say. But just incredibly hair-pulling games today watching because, what we saw clearly wasn't the best version of the San Diego Chargers. And I say San Diego because I could call them LA, but it's the same old Chargers. It doesn't matter. They just did not put out the best effort because they didn't prepare properly. Sometimes you bombed a test because you didn't study the right material. The Chargers clearly did not study their subject the way that they should have, because if they had, they would have known what they trotted out there was never going to work, ever, unless there was an injury to Tom Brady. That was about the only scenario where that game plan was going to work. And as for the Saints, you don't bring out the Lombardi Trophy in the divisional round. I don't care. It's a distraction for your team. They got by barely because Nick Foles sucks. And again, a halfway decent QB like Carson Wentz or anyone else could have actually changed the dynamic of that game once the Saints were able to clamp down on those receivers and jam them at the line of scrimmage. A different QB probably wins that game for the Eagles. Just being perfectly blunt. A different QB probably wins it. If Carson Wentz was actually healthy, they probably win that game today. But the media will never say that because they would rather sell the dynamic of Foles magic, which is, utter nonsense. But, be that as it may, I will always give it to you straight and let you know where I stand on these topics. But I was just utterly shocked that the Chargers were that incompetent. It's almost impossible to be that incompetent to roll out a game plan that inept. It literally was trying to use reverse psychology and failing miserably at it. That's the only thing I could describe it as. But I'll leave it there. We'll get into a couple other items tomorrow, hopefully, and take it from there. But that's the end of the divisional round weekend and the last 4 games slate in the NFL. So just 2 games left until the Super Bowl, and I can't wait to see how it plays out next week. So we'll do a little bit more in-depth analysis of the games next week, and obviously talk some NBA and other sports as well. So that's going to do it for the show tonight. Have a good one, folks. I'll see you next week.